We started Founders Fund in 2005. So in different ways, I've been at this, and I'd done some angel investing before that, but I've been doing this for 20 plus years. And the area where we've probably had the least success from a returns basis in software, the two worst areas are educational software related companies and healthcare IT companies.
Ever wondered why brilliant startups still fail in broken industries like healthcare? Peter Thiel breaks it down and reveals Palantir's brutal fight against the system. Check this video out.
And like education, we felt was so hard. We didn't even, we did very little. Healthcare, we tried a few more things, but it's, and the rough version of what's gone wrong in the healthcare sectors. We've done so little in education, I feel I can't even comment on it. But healthcare, what's roughly gone wrong is you have all sorts of things that sound like a pretty good plan for reforming the system. And it's okay, it's this one angle on the pricing model that you need to change, but then there are 10 different ways you can do it. And it's these complicated ways you have to get the payments to shift from the insurance companies or the government or the hospitals, which are very kludgy. If you can just get consumers or doctors to change, that might be easier, but they typically are not the people who pay. And so there's this, very kludgy, messed up system. Lots of people try to do it. My sociological model is always that I'm deeply skeptical of investments where a lot of VCs would go to some silly VC networking event and want to brag about it. And I feel there's a lot of that with the healthcare education startups.
This is like the green tech stuff too. It's too popular, basically.
The green tech stuff. Yeah, I mean, at some point it loses money and then it's not popular anymore. But
isn't it crazy that in 2025, with all our technology, healthcare systems are still this fragmented? AI-driven platforms, like those pioneered by Palantir, are proving that data transparency and efficiency can actually fix what outdated bureaucracy keeps breaking. You have to wonder, why are we still trusting broken structures instead of building smarter ones?
But while it lasts, it's very popular because there's no fast-term accountability in venture capital. Sometimes you have momentum and the valuations go up, and that does give you a feel whether things are working. But in practice, it's 5-10 years later, you get liquidity on these businesses, or even longer. It takes incredibly long. And so people tend to over-index on these sociological factors and what's popular. And so there's a way that the healthcare education sectors, even though they're very broken, people have these often too conventional ideas on how to fix them. And so, it's, I don't know, another trend where I've tried investing some over the last decade is that, are all these marijuana related businesses. And it's like, it's obviously like a big trend, but it's an obvious trend. And then it turned out to be extremely hard to figure out what to do with.
Yeah. It's some of the things that are too popular and too obvious. It's just, you have to have a totally different take on them or it's not going to work.
You like, if you have an unpopular take on it, that might work.
If popularity is a false signal in venture investing, what does that say about today's AI gold rush? The smartest players, like Palantir, are focused not on hype cycles, but on solving the deep, systemic problems others avoid. Could avoiding the obvious actually be the key to dominating the future? The real wins come from seeing value before it becomes popular.
So the time I was working for you, were working on the hedge fund, you were invested in Facebook, you're doing other investing, and we decided to really go all in and spend a lot of time on Palantir. Why was that the right choice then as tech? But would you go more specifically? Like what was your high level around that at that time? How were you thinking about it? What gap were we going after?
It was very broadly government, and then it was within that it was defense. More narrowly, it was sort of the intelligence community that's sort of defense adjacent. It was a couple of years after 9/11. We were sort of starting it in 2003, 2004, and there were all these ways that I felt that we didn't, that we had these very low tech very privacy violating solutions for the terrorism problem. You know, it was annoying that you had to take off your shoes at every airport, which was like just not security, but it was this incredibly intrusive security theater. And then, yeah, the question was, could you do something where you'd have, you know, way more security with way fewer, you know, technology's doing more with less. And so the terrorism context was, could we have more security against terrorists with less intrusive civil liberties violations? And then there was broadly this question, you know, was there some way to reset all these things in the government? And it was a black box. And, you know, we did not know whether places like the CIA and NSA and places like that had, you know, some super duper computer working in the background that was catching all the terrorists. We sort of suspected they didn't. And then it took a while to figure that out, but I think our suspicions were probably correct.
Yeah, we saw them doing a lot of things that made us suspect that they're actually gotten way behind Silicon Valley.
You know, and there were, I mean, there were details that, you know, it was hard to say. You know, I remember our first trip to Langley in 2005. We got an In-Q-Tel to invest, and you and I were there. And I think it took us about a day or two to process. But, you know, at the end of the trip, it was like, do you want to buy some stuff from the CIA gift shop? And it was like, you can get a windbreaker and a CIA cap.
And coins, they were kind of cool.
I think they were, half of them were made in China, which was, you know, but and then, of course, there was probably some, you know, there's some Steelman version where it was just a decoy and there was really a lot of stuff going on in the background. But
this story highlights just how massive the gap was between government capabilities and private sector innovation. How could national security be trusted to systems where even basic tech wasn't working? Palantir's bet wasn't just on better tools. It was on building trust, speed, and real intelligence capabilities. Its early decision to focus on real operational technology, not theater, was a complete game changer for national security.
And so in that context, you'd think, okay, there's some very big problem that can be solved. It, you know, in some ways it turned out to be more difficult than one would have thought. You know, there obviously are all these sectors we have that are very, very broken, where you know, education, healthcare, all these sort of deeply broken sectors where the solution, you know, there's some obvious solutions, and the fact they have not been implemented tells you there's some big barriers to implementation.
They're set up not to allow you to break them. This is kind of what I think of.
The Palantir version is, you know, there was this, I forget what the acronym stands for. There was this software program. This was once we moved from intelligence community into the broader military, called DCIGS, which was sort of this, in theory, was a system where you're supposed to figure out ways to integrate the data across all these units in the field and headquarters, and, you know, integrate what was going on, which is an incredibly important thing to do. In practice, it was sort of a kludgy consultant billion-dollar boondoggle that didn't work, and we naturally thought we would replace it in 6 months, and it took something like 10 years. We finally replaced it in 2019, and, you know, we had to sue the Army, and you know, we had all our consultants quit and said, you know, this is just the most ridiculous thing. You'll never get you can't sue your customer, and you definitely can't sue the Army. And not only will you not get them as a customer, you will not get anybody else in DC. You'll just be blackballed by everybody. But then, you know, and it was under, it was in 2016 that we sued them. It was under a 1994 law where, you know, the military was supposed to have an open procurement process. And then what you can do when you sue somebody is you get discovery, and you sort of discover what's going on in the sausage making factory that no one's investigated for 22 years. And there's a lot of stuff.
How many companies would have the courage to sue their biggest potential customer and still come out stronger? This fight shows how deeply entrenched inefficiency had become inside critical government systems. Palantir's victory wasn't just legal. It was a major statement that the era of bloated, ineffective tech was over.
You know, there were internal reports that Palantir worked better, which didn't matter because obviously nobody can assess the software. But then more scandalously, there were, you know, orders to suppress the reports. There were emails that people had to hide the findings. And there was a cover-up, and this did not sound like the open procurement process. And then you won at the court level, then you won at the district, at the DC circuit level, and you know, they were forced to reopen the process, and then after a decade, we sort of got the contract. So yeah, so there was something that was doable, but it was not as straightforward as it sounded.
It feels like there's these, and SpaceX had to sue as well, of course. It feels like there's these parts of our society that are set up to just maintain their broken nature, and you have to just punch really, really, really hard through them. And it's very rare people do that,
Yeah, SpaceX was the first successful template to do it. And there's obviously something like this. The university system seems as broken or more than the military procurement process, and then especially with the accrediting agencies and all these things where they just are designed to prevent newcomers. And it's like if you actually had a newcomer, they would just eat the field or whatever.
They try to crush you. They try to crush you. It took us thousands of pages of regulation. But
I think there was an Elon metaphor he told me once, and this was like, I don't remember when, but it was like maybe 2010, 2011. And it was sort of like there were these 3 or 4 aerospace companies in the U.S. that were like really badly managed and badly run, and it was sort of, they were these very fat cows on this grassy enclosed field, and if you ever got in there was just going to be a bloodbath.
Oh yeah.
If innovation threatens broken systems so deeply that they actively cover up success, what does that say about the future of American competitiveness? Palantir, like SpaceX, proved that persistence, combined with cutting-edge technology, can punch through entrenched bureaucracy. Their success is a blueprint for how AI companies today must fight and win against status quo inertia.